Welcome everyone to Africam4Good, brought to you by explore.org. Thank you for joining us today, where we'll be having a discussion on Africa's safari Ferrari, the cheetah. And today I'm joined by the founder and executive director of the Cheetah Conservation Fund, Dr. Laurie Marker. It's so great to have her on the show today to discuss the amazing work CCF have been doing with cheetah conservation in Namibia and all over Africa. Hi, Dr. Marker. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, great to see you. Thank you very much for having me on your show.
Yeah, super fun. We're excited to hear what you have to say about what is a lot of our viewers' favorite animals to see on the cameras. But as we start all the shows, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Well, I am a conservation scientist and I study cheetahs, and I have since the early 1970s. And what we do here in Namibia, and I set the foundation up in 1990, is to try to work with the rural communities for having them understand how cheetahs live in their ecosystems, and then how to live with them and not kill them. Because the cheetah is one of Africa's most endangered big cats. Today, there are less than 7,500 individuals found throughout their ranges in Africa. So they do need a lot of help, and we've been working actively on developing programs around human-wildlife conflict resolution, trying to look at their ecology, their biology, and putting into place education and awareness programs so that people learn to live with them.
Well, that's a pretty broad spectrum of things, and pretty amazing that they became, a passion for you. How did you get into cheetahs in particular, all the way from the US, and then what made you decide to start the Cheetah Conservation Fund?
Well, back in the early 1970s, I was in Oregon and I was running a wildlife park, and we were one of the few places in the world that had cheetahs, and it was about the same. And so with that, I was just fascinated with cheetahs, and I wanted to know pretty much everything about them. And as I wrote to people around the world, people would say, well, we don't know a lot about cheetahs anymore. They don't do well in captivity. We're losing them in the wild. They don't breed well. And when you find out something about cheetahs, let us know. So I did, and I actually ran the most successful breeding program for cheetahs in North America, the third most successful in the world. And with that, I started collecting lots of information and sharing it with people all around the world, because I thought everyone should know about the cheetah. And then what I found was that in coming to Namibia to do a research project in the middle 1970s with a cheetah that I actually had raised, who had been captive born in Oregon, and I brought her over to Namibia to do a first of its kind research project to find out if a captive born cheetah could learn how to hunt and what steps were involved, and whether it was mother taught or instinctual. And what I found is the cheetah could learn how to hunt, and there was an instinct to it, although mother does play a big role in teaching them how to hunt. But I also found that farmers were killing cheetahs like flies, and somebody should do something, because we really needed to save the wild cheetah. And that's what kind of got me engaged. And in the later 1970s, I kept asking people around the world to help get involved in trying to save the cheetah. At that point in time, nobody really seemed to care. Most of the cheetahs were not found in protected game reserves. They were outside of game reserves where people were. And back in those days, biologists didn't work with rural communities. We worked on cheetahs that lived in, or wildlife that lived in game reserves. And so when I moved here in 1990, when I set up the nonprofit foundation, I actually went out and worked with the rural communities, with the people on whose land the cheetah was living. So ours was the first organization that did that. Now, the cheetah that I took to Namibia back in the 70s, her name was Kayam, and she did learn how to hunt. But with that, she came back to Oregon, and she lived the rest of her life there. But from that, we actually celebrate Kayam every year, because I was given the opportunity to set up a World Day for Cheetahs, which is International Cheetah Day. And that's on December 4th. And that was Kayam's birthday. So there's a celebration that I have every year. And I ask everyone around the world to celebrate the fastest animal on earth. And we really need to work fast if we're going to save them as well.
That's awesome. What a cool story. And of course, we are here to celebrate with you that World Cheetah Day, and that show will come out just before then, as you said, on the 4th of December. I had no idea it was Kayam's birthday as well. That's really such a great little background on that. And well, I'll have a little cheers to Kayam on the 4th as well. I think that sounds like a great little thing to do for all of us.
She was a very special
So you
cheetah.
mentioned
Great.
Yeah, it sounds like it. But you mentioned that there are only about 7,500 cheetah left in the wild, which I imagine would be our sort of best guess at this current juncture. From the time when you started in 1990 through to now, what do you feel is the current conservation status of cheetahs across Africa?
Well, we've seen a decline in that period of time by, over probably over 100%. In the numbers of the population was close to 35,000, I think, by the middle 1970s. And so the decline has continued, sadly. And a lot of this really has to do with habitat loss, which is, obviously a problem for all the wildlife in the world today. Because of growing human populations, but there's also issues facing them with human wildlife conflict, because the cheetah doesn't do well in the protected areas. So over 80% of them are found outside of protected areas on farming land, where the livestock farmers, rural and commercial, both consider the cheetah to be vermin and will kill them. Then they also have issues with the lack of genetic diversity, which the cheetah is a very unique species because it did come back from a population bottleneck back about 15,000 years ago. So all the cheetahs are very, very similar. And then another problem facing them that is very severe today has been that of illegal wildlife trade. And that's going on in the Horn of Africa primarily, and another area that we also work as well.
Interesting. Yeah, again, a lot of challenges that I know are fairly common across a number of the species here in Africa. But with cheetah in particular, I know certainly working as a guide and various safari regions across Southern Africa, that, as you say, so many of the cheetahs get pushed out by the big predators, lions, spotted hyena, leopard, like this chap behind me. They tend to outcompete the cheetah a little, and they get a little bit bullied in those conservation areas, especially where there's good populations of these bigger predators higher up on that predator hierarchy. So that makes sense to me that there would be a lot more outside of protected areas, but I had no idea the numbers that that were actually shifting out of the reserves.
Yeah, it is. It has been that way, and obviously, as the human population continues to grow, and we have more rural farmers, there's also more livestock, which means there's also less wildlife. And so those are the biggest issues, is the fact of the cheetah has really no place to go. Its populations are fragmented. Just to give you an idea of what we're looking at, we see about 31 populations in 23 countries. And from that, I think over half of those populations are under 100 individuals. So that is pretty scary. So that fragmentation is causing a major problem as well. And then you combine that with the fact that they do lack genetic diversity. That really is a risk for them ecologically and environmentally as we look at their future. And top predators play such an important role in the health of ecosystems. So what we do is we try to teach farmers how to live in harmony with cheetahs and other predator species and wildlife by looking at their grazing land systems, by looking at their livestock management, the health of their livestock, because a predator is also going to catch an animal that is not healthy. And so through a program that we do called Future Farmers of Africa, we actually teach the farmers much more about how they can be proactive and care for their animals. And if their livestock is healthy, they can also make a greater income with their livestock, and they don't need as many of them. And so what we want to do is grow grass, grow wildlife, manage our livestock, and multiple different ways of having income, because as you know, ecotourism plays a very important role also in Africa and to our African communities. And people do want to see the cheetah. It is just an amazing animal, and everybody who does come to Africa wants to see it. So it's special.
Yeah, agreed. That's always been the case for me. I happened to start guiding in an area where we had great leopard viewing in the reserve. Maybe, you know, Pinda private game reserve in South Africa, where, you know, we had incredible game viewing of cheetah in particular, compared to many others. We didn't have high numbers of hyena. We didn't have high numbers of leopard. Pretty good lion, but the cheetah managed to do pretty well there. But yeah, it's an interesting phenomenon that they don't work so well with those other big predators. But you know, great insight, you know, from your side. Thank you.
Well, it's interesting too with the picture that you have up there. You know, a lot of people don't even know the differences between a cheetah or a leopard. And I mean, you and I do, obviously. And you can see first those tear marks which run down from their eyes, and the leopard doesn't have that. The leopard's head is much bigger, the body is much bigger. They're a more powerful animal than the cheetah. And the cheetah really just has speed. So it can go up to about 110 kilometers per hour. And with that, though, they're a sprinter. They can only do that in a very short period of time. And yet they are Africa's best hunter. However, they lose a lot of their kills to the other predators because they don't have big teeth, big claws, they can't fight, they're a non-aggressive animal. And so if a leopard comes up to them, they turn around and they get away. Or sometimes the leopard actually will kill them or kill their young. So that's what competition is. And that's why having large landscapes is so important. And what we're trying to work with are these communities to try to help develop a kind of a wildlife economy, so to speak, so that people can learn the value of wildlife and also the value of a top predator like the cheetah.
Yeah, I think a lot of ecotourism and travel companies have noticed the same thing over the last 20 years or so, that working with the communities becomes so much more important to have those systems work, to have those protected areas stay protected, and to have buy-in from those communities. So yeah, really important that they all get engaged. But one of the things that I wanted to chat to you about that you mentioned earlier is you do a lot of work with rescuing cheetah cubs from the illegal wildlife trade. Can you tell us about your work in rescuing and rehabilitating those cubs?
Well, yes, we actually rescue also here in Namibia, or we work with our government here in Namibia on confiscation of animals, primarily from the human-wildlife conflict issues. So we do get a number of cubs in, and many of those we have been able to actually rehabilitate. But those are animals that have come to us when they're, you know, maybe 6 or 7 months old, and they are very, very wild, and we can put them in a very large enclosure, and the back. We've got a very large reserve here, so there is a rehabilitation area where we work with the cats, and we've had a good success on putting cheetahs back out into the wild here in Namibia. We also work with rescue cheetah cubs up in Somaliland, and these cubs have also been confiscated from the Ministry of Environment and Rural Development up in Somaliland, but they actually come to us usually as just really tiny little babies and have to be bottle raised, and those do not make good rehabilitation animals. Many of these animals that have come to us through this, they're on their way actually out of Somaliland into Yemen and into the Middle East as pets. And from that, it is an illegal trade that's going on that we've been able to, get into this and stop that. But with that, we've now ended up with a number of cheetahs at our safe houses in Somaliland. We have 67 cheetahs today that we are taking care of. And from that, most of them have come in horrible condition, malnourished. Half of them come in just dead, really, on arrival. They're in such bad condition. And for every one cheetah that might make it into the pet trade, we probably lose 4 or 5 cheetahs before they even get into the pet trade. Fortunately, now we're, confiscating many of those, but still some are slipping through. And if they do make it into the pet trade, they maybe only live for 1 or 2 years of age, because again, they're not given the proper facilities, the right exercise, the right diets. And the people want them as a pet because they are a beautiful animal. and not big and aggressive like some of the other big cats, but they don't live in captivity very well under those circumstances.
Interesting. And do you think social media has increased the desire for people to have wild animals like cheetahs as pets, or have you found that social media helps you find illegal cubs that you can confiscate? Probably a bit of both, I would think.
A little bit of both, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we've learned an awful lot about the illegal wildlife trade by tracking what's going on with people in social media, where lots of likes, of somebody, sleeping with the cheetah or putting it in its car or walking it on a leash. That's not what we want to see. We want to see animals living in the wild. And when you like that on a social media, that is causing it to be more of a problem. And then people think, well, if that person can have it, why can't I too? And so that has been one of the biggest problems. So again, social media, if we can get the word out that wild animals are not pets, then social media can help that way as well and spread the word. But if you are dealing with people who have that mentality, we also have to work on that on other levels as well, through like a demand reduction campaign by actually peer pressure as well, where people who know better say to somebody that they do know, that really isn't cool. It's more cool if we can try to help save them in the wild and work together like with organizations like ourselves that are on the ground trying to save the animal, working with the communities, trying to save the wild in the wild.
Yeah, I again, couldn't agree more. If someone out there watching the interview sees someone on their social media or even in person with a cheetah as a pet, should they report it?
Reporting it's always good, and we do accept reports. If you send it to our website, cheetah.org, there is an information email there. Do share the information. We are also working with a variety of other organizations to try to stop the trade as well. And a lot of it, again, is through awareness, for people to understand the problems that having them in captivity faces.
Yeah. Okay, well, we've touched on a lot of the difficulties in cheetah conservation, the challenges you guys have had over the years. But what for you has been or have been some of the success stories in cheetah conservation and, for yourself personally?
Well, after studying cheetahs for over 40 years, I'm still amazed at everything that I find out about them. Of course, when I started back in the early 90s, nobody really knew anything about cheetahs in the wild. And so much of the work that we've done through our early radio telemetry studies taught us how large a cheetah's home range is. Nobody knew this before. And they're covering, huge areas, 800 to 1,500 square kilometers. And that's a very large range. From that, being able to study so many animals in the wild has been fascinating. We've worked on over 1,000 cheetahs here in Namibia and going on, a couple hundred plus animals up in Somaliland, and learning about their genetic makeup and the basic biology of them has been very, very interesting, and how they're living in the wild and what they're eating. So we actually, wrote the book on cheetah ecology and biology. And that book is called Cheetahs, Their Biology and Conservation. It's a big textbook. You can get it also online, or it's an Elsevier book. And so I think that was a highlight, is that when I was asked, when I wanted to know everything about the cheetah back in the early 70s when I started my career, and people around the world said they didn't know anything about the cheetah, I think to me, it's been fascinating to study and to let everybody know about them. But with that, we need to take that information and we need to actively put it into use and save the cheetah, like the tools that we have for helping farmers live together with the cheetah. These are, it's not a blank slate. We have those tools available, from understanding more about how farmers work with their livestock, how cheetahs and other predators live on the land, that we can actually live together. And I think our program, like Future Farmers of Africa, has been very, very successful in that. And I'd have to say another highlight is to actually find tools like using livestock guarding dogs, which we have employed for now 26 years here in Namibia. And we've helped the program in South Africa. We've helped in Botswana. We've helped throughout many other areas in the world by understanding that dogs have been used for thousands of years to help protect livestock from predators. And from that, we use a Kangal dog or an Anatolian Shepherd, a Turkish breed of dog. And this breed has been around for about 5,000 years. And they instinctually protect livestock against any intruder. And so predators are something that they will bark very loudly at, and a predator does not want to come in and get hurt. So the predator goes away. The dog stays with the livestock's healthy, and then the farmers do not have to kill cheetahs and other predators. And we see if the farmers have dogs like this, they have reduction of losses from over 80 to 100% reduction of loss to predators in their livestock herd. So those have been some of the highlights, I'd say.
That is an incredible success. Yeah, please go ahead.
Well, another big highlight, though, has been able to put so many animals back out into the wild. So even though we've worked on a number of animals here, over 1,000, close to 600 to 700 of those animals have been able to go right back out into the wild with radio collars, satellite collars, and working together with the farmers who have started learning much more about how the cheetah is living. So the farmers are our partners in conservation here in Namibia, and getting that concept for the cheetah through and utilizing that for other predators has also been, I think, a model that we have been able to share with predator biologists around the world.
Awesome. Well, I know we all love positive conservation stories, so that's a lot of good stuff coming out from cheetah conservation, and I think we'll give a lot of people confidence in the future.
But we do want everyone to celebrate the cheetah, and
of course.
And that's always a fun thing to do as well. And most people don't even know the facts about the cheetah. I mean, I know between you and I having our cheetah and our leopard pictures here, the leopard is still found, throughout most of their ranges, although their numbers have also declined, but they are more of a, sneaky predator. They hunt, pretty much anything, where the cheetah is pretty specialized in its range in the grassland ecosystems, as well as in the prey size that it will hunt as well. So just fascinating that this fastest land animal and so sleek and beautiful is up against the wall these days and against time to figure out if we're going to save it for future generations.
Yeah, agreed. When I first started guiding, I couldn't believe how much of a poser the cheetah was. It was always one of my favorite animals to take pictures of, because they're always up on a termite mound, go up onto a dead branch or dead tree, and sit perfectly in the light. Much more of a supermodel than the leopard behind me. Can be much more difficult to work with.
Yeah. But they have such great eyesight too. Cheetahs can see great distances. And so when they're sitting up on that termite mound, they're actually scanning the horizons or up in the tree, looking for where their next prey will be, because they have to hunt actively pretty much every day if they can, especially if it's a mother raising her cubs. And mothers raising their cubs, the cubs stay with them for about a year and a half until they are functionally hunting on their own. And so a female cheetah works overtime to take care of her offspring. And then when they do separate out, the brothers stay together and form what are called coalitions. And those brothers then, if they are in a coalition, they can form a better territory. And then, so that's very important too. And just understanding their behavior and how they're living out in the wild, I think has been fascinating. And sharing that with everybody.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that with us. How do you think people out there can celebrate World Cheetah Day on the 4th of December?
Well, I think there's lots of fun things people can do. I mean, they can dress up in, cheetah spotted clothes going to work. Many people, though, there aren't very many cheetah clothes, unfortunately. Most everything's leopard. And so even when you do dress up like that with your spots, just make sure that you let people know this isn't cheetah spots, but I'm celebrating International Cheetah Day. Go to our website, which is cheetah.org. And also the website, which is internationalcheetahday.com. And there's all kinds of activities on there, activities for school groups, activities for, host a spot the cheetah party, and, maybe have a spot of wine or something, or, and you can just celebrate in a lot of different ways using the spot pattern for fun. Talking about, having trivia games also. What do you know about the cheetah? Do you know that it's different than a leopard? How fast does a cheetah run? So a lot of those activities are both on our website, cheetah.org, or on the International Cheetah Day website.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for that. Lastly, what would your message be to those watching about cheetah conservation?
Well, if you love cheetahs or you think they're beautiful, please get involved and try to help save them. The Cheetah Conservation Fund is a global organization, and we welcome people to get involved in trying to help save them. Obviously, it takes funds, and we do need to raise the money to keep the work going in order to save them. Please come and visit us here at the Cheetah Conservation Fund. We're based outside of Otjiwarongo. We're on a very large game reserve. And we welcome guests, day visitors. We're going to have, we're open always here at the Cheetah Conservation Fund, but we have lots of activities going on at the Cheetah Conservation Fund on the 4th of December. So we welcome people to come and visit us and learn a lot more from our staff, from the geneticists to the veterinarians, to the people who are out working with the livestock farmers and our livestock guarding dogs, and more about the facts of how to save the cheetah. So we welcome people to get involved with us, and you can sponsor one of our orphan cheetahs that will never go back out into the wild, or learn more about some of the programs. And if you have the means, we certainly do need the support to try to help save the cheetah for the future.
Well, thank you so much for chatting with us today, Dr. Marker. All the best with your continued work at CCF, and we'll think of you every time we're watching these incredible cats on the cameras.
Thank you. We welcome you to learn more about cheetahs and save them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you all once again for watching the show. Please join us again next week for Africam4Good, brought to you by explore.org. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay informed for any of our upcoming shows. But for now, it's cheers from all of us.